is the Nike Phantom GX, which is a much needed update to the Nike Phantom range. But is it Hypervenom 1 levels of genius or Hypervenom 2 levels of complete failure? Today I'll tell you what they do well and also not so well, and hopefully help you decide if you should buy a pair or not. Because I'm JayMike and this is my review of the Phantom GX. The Phantom goes all in on grip with Nike's new GripKnit, which is the technology they introduced in the Flyknit Ultra back in 2017, with individually coated yarns combined with uncoated high tenacity yarns for a balanced grip that's not too grippy. But more on that later, because the first thing you notice when you step into the boot is the fit. And the upper is made up primarily of two pieces. You have the Flyknit tongue, midfoot and heel as the inner layer, and then on top of that you have the GripKnit, which almost overlaps the Flyknit, and on the low cut gives this Phantom Venom style quarter-length lace cover, whereas on the DF they've gone full Phantom Vision mode with this Ghost Laces full lace cover, meaning that it's not laces, the laces are there, they're just hiding. But the upper package itself is great and gives the feeling of wrapping the foot in that right way. The GripKnit here is, I would say, impressively pliable and has this almost bendable softness to it in the way that it wraps the foot relatively tightly and snugly actually, but with this delicate gentleness, meaning that it has this free feeling in that very Hypervenom 1-like way. It's just snug, but free. And now that we're talking about GripKnit, it also feels a little bit stretchy, meaning that the boot adjusts pretty well to wider feet, and if you have a wide flat foot, I mean, there is just a lot of material to work with. And that's especially the case for the low version of the GX, that just feels a bit wider and more roomy than the DF. And the reason for that lies in the heel, because just like on the Mercurial Vapor, the heel is a bit wider and rounder compared to the high-cut version. And that means that it feels a little bit more open and airy around the midfoot and the heel and the lower ankle, where compared to the DF, it feels as if the sock and the heel in general just follows the shape of the foot a bit more naturally, a bit more closely. And for that reason alone, I like the fit in the DF better. But overall, the fit is just really comfortable, and it has that interesting combination of freedom, but in a snug and secure way. The lockdown is okay, but I'll dive more into that later, because I want to talk about the heel again, which feels very free and unrestricted, seeing that Nike have actually removed a part of the internal heel counter and also made the seam a bit off-center. So there are no pressure points, and it just feels very free and unrestricted overall. Now, size-wise, the Phantom GX runs a little, maybe quarter of a size long, but I would definitely say that true to size is still the way to go. Now, in terms of the touch, the Phantom GX really sets itself apart from basically every other boot out there. It is wild and unlike anything else you'll find out there. The GT upper here has a little bit of a wax-like sticky feeling to it that reminds me a little bit of spiderweb. But the beauty is that it actually adds something to the touch, that little extra something. It's definitely something you'll need to get used to at first, but for me it was never too much, just had a really nice balance. And there's just a lot of grip when you're on the ball, both in wet and dry conditions. And that left me with a feeling of confidence when I had the ball, because it allowed me to focus a little less on my touch and a little bit more on looking up and around. And that's pretty great. But GripKnit apart, the rest of the feel on the ball is relatively thin, but without feeling razor sharp. And with that big clean striking surface and a really low pointy toe box, shooting in the GX feels rather good as well. And in general, I see the boot as a nice tool when you're on the ball that adds an actual benefit to the touch without any bullshit. And I like how it in many ways feels like a continuation of what Nike wanted to do with the Phantom Vision, but also to some extent with the Hypervenom 1, that thin, wax-like, natural sensation. The outsole has been made for little bursts of speed and directional changes, with both conical, tri-star and chevron-shaped studs, ensuring a quick and explosive first 3 steps. And it's a nice outsole. It doesn't feel chunky, and the studs themselves have Adequate bite, I would say, when you want to push off. And also it is just extremely flexible. That means it's very comfortable when you run around, and it gives you the feeling that it bends very freely without any resistance when you want to twist and turn. Which is nice in a lot of senses, but however also brings me to 4 annoying things that you need to know about. Because while a free and flexible outsole is really good for comfort, I would have liked a bit more stiffness in the midfoot to get that responsiveness when you just want to floor it and explode away from your opponent. And while the lockdown is adequate, most of the time, when you really put stress on the upper and change direction very sharply, I could have done with a bit more secure hold. Just a little bit. And now that we're on the topic of lockdown, for me the heel in the low-cut version is just a little bit too loose and doesn't sit tightly enough around the ankle. Just says, there's a lot of open space right there. And for me it means that the back half of the boot feels a little bit sluggish and not tight enough. So, the DF with that tighter, more sculpted fit in the heel is just way better. But the DF has this ghost lace cover, which is not my kind of jam. Look, I get the deal. Lace cover, cleaner striking surface, nice, all that jazz. And it's not a deal breaker. But when you want to adjust your laces really deep, it's just a bit of a nuisance, because like, that's just, yeah. And finally, as cool as this little gold swoosh looks, it sits very close to the white border of the big swoosh, which means that it creates a bit of a hard spot right there. And it's not a disaster, but it's right where I really touch the ball a lot when I dribble, so I could have done without it. With that said, the Phantom GX is a good, really important step forward, and it actually makes the Phantom relevant again. It's not perfect, but if you like that free, snug, sock-like sensation and you just want that little bit of extra grip, the GX is really nice and unique. It's a big step up from the Phantom GT, and I would say definitely worth getting. However, if responsiveness is what you want, maybe the GX isn't the first boot you should take a look at. With that said though, between the 2 versions, the DF is definitely what it's all about for me. But what do you think? Let me know down below. Make sure to cop the GX in both high and low in the link to Unisport right over there. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hit the playlist if you like learning some cool new skills. And with those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio.